Magna Acquisition's YouTube channel. Today we have a special interview with Ben Van Gaasbeek. He is a broker and the owner of RealSmart, as well as our CEO, Jeff Lee of Magna Acquisition. So today we're going to be talking about multi-family investments, and we have the expert here.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us, Ben.
Hey, my pleasure.
Really appreciate it. So I met Ben a few months ago, and him and we talked about real estate investments, and Ben has a plethora of experience with multifamilies. So that's a really special time for us to share, and I've learned a lot. So thank you, Rosie, for kicking us off. So Ben, maybe a quick introduction. Rosie already gave it, but quick introduction.
Sure. So I'm a broker licensed in California and in Tennessee. Most of the multifamily properties that I sell actually are in Tennessee to California-based investors. And I've been in the business about 12 years now, and I enjoy it.
Great. So how did you get involved in Tennessee versus other states?
Sure. So when I first got into the business, well, about 2 years after I got in, I connected with a guy who was doing investments in Texas. One of the problems in California is that the properties are so expensive relative to the rents that they bring in that they don't cash flow very well. In fact, I know a lot of guys that have bought properties that have to pay money at the end of every month just to cover their mortgage and other expenses, even though they've got everything rented out at the top rents that the market will yield. And I don't know about you. Yes, there are reasons why you'd want to, still buy a piece of real estate that you have to pay to. But I think it's a lot better if I can buy a piece of real estate that pays me.
Yeah, sure. So I live in California. I know California. Mm-hmm. How can you convince me and others to invest out of state?
Well, investing out of state is scary because, especially if you don't know the market well. You don't know who lives there. You don't know the profile of the demographic of the tenant base in a particular area that you might be looking at buying. You might listen to some guy on the radio or read some email that came in and think, wow, I can get 50% returns each year if I just go buy in that neighborhood out there in the middle of wherever. Mm. But if you've never been there and you don't understand that even a quarter mile makes a difference on where you buy a piece of property, you can go from having a winner to something that hurts you financially for a long time.
Wow. Okay, for me being a common Joe, I don't know much about what's a multifamily property and all these terms. Can you give a little bit of description of what is a multifamily property and the kind of that process of...
So multifamily property literally means exactly what it sounds like. You've got a single property that you can rent out to multiple different family units. And a family unit can be a single person that lives in a house or an apartment, or it can be 30 people that live in a single type of house or apartment. Now, hopefully you don't have a one bedroom with 30 people in it because that creates a whole lot of wear and tear issues. But the idea is essentially that you have a single family home, which a lot of people live in, just a regular house. Anything where you have more than one unique space with entry and exit can be a multifamily.
Okay. So multifamily is anything between 2 units and above. What separates a 1 to 4 unit versus a 5 and up unit?
Sure. So especially for people that are just looking to get into investing in multifamily, a great entry point is buying 2 to 4 units, duplex, triplex, fourplex, or quad, because they can still be obtained with the standard type of financing that you buy a single family home with.
All right. So to get someone involved and feeling ready to invest in a multifamily, what would you say is your number one advice? And also, what are the risks to investing in a multifamily?
So, number one advice when investing in multifamily is make sure, especially if this is your first time, a lot of people, especially when they're in their 20s and early 30s, will want to buy a place, or they should be buying a place that they would want to live in themselves. In fact, it's easier to get the financing if, let's say, you're going to buy a 4-unit property. And Jeff, you go in to buy this thing and you agree to live in one of those units, you can get an FHA loan on that property now with only 3% down. So if you're moving into that, or if you're a VA, if you've had military experience, you can qualify for a VA loan with 0 down on that same property. And so the risk or the benefits, though, is that now you've got 3 other units that you can rent out and have those people pay your property taxes, your insurance, your mortgage, maybe even your utilities and all that, so that you can live essentially rent-free in your own building.
Yeah.
And everybody else pays your expenses. Now, the downside of that is you've got to make sure that you've got enough money in the bank if bad things happen. Sometimes you're going to get that call at 2 a.m. from your tenant that lives next door to you and say, "Hey, Jeff, my toilet won't flush, and I know it's 3 in the morning, but I want it to flush right now."
Right.
And you've got to go take care of that. One more thing on the things to be aware of, making sure that you have enough money in the bank. Because if you, like in this situation where I visited a property in Texas, I'm going to, after that visit, evict 2 of my tenants. Well, actually, I'm going to not renew them. Their leases expire in a couple of months. I'm just going to not renew them. And then the third one I am going to actually, or gave me notice that they're going to be moving out soon. So out of 4 units, I've got 3 that I'm going to have to turn over in the next 6 months. So the consideration I have to have is mortgage still has to be paid. I still have to set aside money for property taxes. So making sure that you have enough of a reserve buffer just in case you end up with a wild vacancy like that. One of the things that I do on my properties, and I suggest to everybody else, is figure out every single cost that you have associated with that property. What is my mortgage payment going to cost? What is my property taxes going to cost? Now divide that by 12 so you can kind of set a monthly budget. Your insurance for the property, what's that going to cost? Divide that by 12. And then I set aside anywhere from $50 to $150 per unit per month out of that rent into just kind of a reserve account. Or in the case of one of the tenants that we're going to not renew, the reason why I'm not renewing them is when I got there, they had 17 pets.
Oh, wow.
Maybe not 17, but it was close to that.
Unaware?
They were supposed to have 4, which was already a concession because normally I limited to 2. But they lived in the building before we bought it. So literally 2 of the other tenants had been complaining to me in the last month about strong pet odors coming through their kitchen pantries, which are back to back in those units. Wow. So every time you open to get your food, you smell pet. It's going to make for a not very appetizing dinner. And you're going to want to not live in that unit much longer. So that tenant, I'm going to ask politely to leave, and I've already figured out it's going to cost me about $12,000 to make that one ready because of the damage that the pets have done.
Okay.
Wow.
So you've got to have money aside for that worst case scenario.
So absolutely, there's a lot of budgeting involved. There's a lot of work that has to be done with even contracting and communication.
Right.
So what are the benefits to having a multifamily? Before we scare away all the viewers.
Yeah.
Yeah, now everybody's like, I'm never going to buy a multifamily in my life. The idea of buying a multifamily, though, is that eventually you're going to get nice cash flow. So that property, when we're not having to deal with pet smell, normally brings in, after our expenses on just 4 units, about $2,200 a month.
So when you talked about the income, what's the cap rate?
Okay, so cap rate is a calculation of all of your income minus all of your expenses, and then that number divided by the purchase price of the property. Okay, so essentially it's a way to calculate your return on investment on your real estate. So a good cap rate really varies from market to market. So we're in San Diego, California. San Diego right now sells a lot of properties at cap rates between 2% and 4%.
Interesting. So not too high.
So that's not a very high cap rate. So if you had $10,000 that you put into a property and you were making 2% on that, do you think you could live off of $200 a year?
Yeah, it'll be tough.
Yeah, it wouldn't be so great. Now, I take that same $10,000 and I invest it in a property in Tennessee, which is why I take investors from here to there. Instead of $200 a year, we're averaging $1,000 a year. So 5 times the returns versus what we can do in San Diego. But with distance, there is risk. You have to trust the people that are on the ground there.
Excellent.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Sure.
Really appreciate it.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. See you guys at the next episode.